Hi guys, Kevin Ellis here with the Apex Racing Academy, and welcome to this track guide for the Nordschliefe VLN layout with the brand new 992 Cup car. So first of all guys, before we actually get into this track guide, obviously this is going to be a little bit of a longer one than we're used to, probably going to be near 30 minutes or so obviously feel free to kind of sit back, relax a little bit. We're going to be here for a while as we kind of go through the circuit. But I just wanted to start off with a little bit of a trick for you guys. Now, obviously, if you're looking at the data pack on VRS, you'll see that lap 0 is the fastest lap instead of lap 1. It's because we don't actually do an outlap at the Nordschleife to kind of cut things down and save ourselves the 8 minutes or so of doing a full outlap. This here is a little trick that you can use. So obviously, when you spawn in your pit box, this is in private test, whip a quick 180 like so, and then drive the wrong way up pit lane. Now you can drive all the way to the end of the pit lane and reset manually if you like. However, this is a slightly quicker way of doing things. Doesn't look great, but if you shoot up and over this wall, you can see it resets us straight back here, and then that only simply leaves us just to drive down the Dottoner and then start the lap straight away. So that cuts out the full almost 8 minute outlap, and it also means that we can get the lap in. This will simulate what happens in the qualifying sessions. Obviously, if you go and do an official qualifying session for the week for this place, you'll start somewhere down here. This is the closest we can replicate it, is by doing this. If you're in a public session, obviously you can't drive the wrong way up pit lane. But what you can do is if you drive around the GP section, and if you see just up here where the track ends, if you drive into this gravel trap or up to these orange cones just up in the distance and hold escape, you will also be reset back to that point on the Dottoner straight as well. So if you're in like a public open practice or the hosted session with us, you can just drive out the pit lane, drive through the GP section, and then drive up to here. Don't take the left onto the Nordschleife, just drive straight through here, stop just around these cones here, reset, and you'll end up back here. However, that bit over the wall, which is a little bit quicker, means we don't need to press the brake or anything like that and hold the reset button. It just shoots us straight here. And then with that, obviously, you start your lap. So here we come, just starting the lap. Not really much to talk about here. And then, obviously, this is us starting the lap now. So, first of all, as we head down towards turn 1, obviously, if you're used to driving the GP circuit, we're carrying a bit more speed now because we've obviously got the Nordschleife section. You get a bit of a run up from the chicane. So just be aware that if you're normally braking at the 100 on the normal GP circuit, we're carrying a good chunk of extra speed here. So we're going to be looking at the 150 board for braking for turn 1. A slightly better mark I like to use actually is just these tyre marks in the track. So right around here is where I like to brake for turn 1, like so. A little bit inside rear locking will begin to happen here. It's not fully solved with this car, but it is way more manageable than before. Down into first gear, and you want to aim for this bollard on the inside, like so. You can see right before the car drops down the hill, we're getting back on at the power. Again, just to start this acceleration process nice and early, get a good run out the corner, but also to give us that rotation that you see here. The car hooks and turns. We're not really tracking out much. We're going to keep it more in the middle of the track and then try and get as far over to the right hand side as we can. This is so that for turn 2, as you come up over this crest, gently onto the brakes, and then aim for the inside curb. This inside curb will pull you around the corner and gradually get back on at the power, and then just watch on the exit here, the car will get a little bit light as it is downhill. Right onto the curb on the outside, no off track for this. As soon as the middle of the car goes over where the curb turns to green here, that's when you're going to get the off track. As you come down the hill as well, a little brake marker. This corner traditionally has always been really hard to spot a brake marker, but something that I recently found is just braking on this little sort of indent on the curb here. You can see it's just a little kind of sharp corner, so as you're coming down the hill, you're sort of looking for it. You can see it here, right as you get over the top of it, we're onto the brakes. We're down into second gear, and just trying to cut as much off this inside as possible. We're a little bit wider than I would have liked, but you can see here, as we get back onto the power, sorry, we're keeping it tight to the inside. On the exit, we're not tracking out over here. This is so that we can open up this right-hander. Simple lift to 50% up over the curb, and then as it settles up to 100%, and then track it out on the exit. Obviously watching for the off tracks, no off track there, that's well within the limits of what we're allowed. Then as we head down into the VLN cut through, get onto the brakes just as this turns to sort of concrete right here, into second gear. Watch for the inside front locking here, and again you want to keep this nice and tight. This isn't really one that you want to drive in deep and then cut back and keep it and kind of tighten it up on the exit. You want to just keep it nice and tight the full way through. Getting the power in as soon as the car sort of drops through, right in the centre of the corner, the car sort of drops into here, braking just before this white line on the left hand side as well, gently kind of trailing off picking up the throttle just about this curb on the left. Again, keeping the car pretty central. We're not really tracking out much to the right hand side. Allows us to get back over to the left. In terms of braking markers for here as well, it's a little bit scarce. There's a sort of tire mark just here that I tend to use as a bit of a reference for brake marks. As I come through the corner, get on the power as early as possible. Just obviously watching up the track, trying to judge the trajectory of the car, make sure we can get through there. And with that, we head down the back straight. Now, something as well with the GP circuit is the car will feel slippery here. The actual Nordschleife itself has a way stickier surface than the actual GP circuit. So if you get out on track and you're spinning a lot in the GP section, don't worry. Once you get onto the Nordschleife section, it will be a little bit easier to handle. Obviously, the GP circuit traditionally is a higher wing circuit, but the Nordschleife is lower wing. So we're running a sort of hybrid of the two. We're sort of moderate wing levels here, just to try and obviously we need to prioritize the actual Nordschleife itself, as that's way more of the circuit. So you will find yourself kind of struggling just a little bit on the GP circuit. As I head into the Bestwick chicane, you see there's this little black mark on the track just here. It's a little kind of shadow just here. You see it from way back here. Just going to brake on that, down into 4th gear, aim for the apex in the left-hander. You want to basically just skim this here. Any more than that and you get an off track. The left is really harsh. And again, you can see how earlier we bring the throttle in here as well, just to power through that chicane. Get up to 100% throttle, flick it into the right, give it a little lift, because as all the weight transfers from the right hand side to the left, the rear will start to sort of kick out just a little bit. Then as we head into the Nordschleife here, not really any brake markers, really. Basically where this seam starts, you can see it sort of shooting off there. We brake on that seam, down into 2nd. Again, nice and tight on the entry. This corner's cambered, so it'll keep you nice and tight to the apex. Keep it tight the full way through, nice and gentle on throttle, because as you come up over the crest there, it will get a little bit loose on you. And then as we head into here, we're 3rd gear. You can see how close we get to the wall. We're aiming out towards the right. I'm going to shoot out to the right, down into 2nd, and then turn it in. Catch the camber of this corner again, and super early back to throttle. As the car compresses, it will turn and rotate, but stay nice and stable. And then with that, we head down the hill. Down the hill here, it's a bit of an easier one. As you come past this 2 kilometer board, turn in, small lift, and then straight back to 100% again. Also watching the grass on the exit. As we come into this next section here, you can see this line that goes across the track. We're going to be using a lot of graffiti on the surface of the circuit, so keep an eye out. I'll be pointing that out quite a bit. There's all the little different bits of graffiti that we use as a brake marker. So that line that goes across the track, we're down into 4th, down into 3rd. Just modulating the brake and throttle just to make sure we're getting the desired rotation, getting the car decelerated, back to throttle nice and early, keeping the car central here as well. And through the left, small lift in 4th. And then again, braking on this graffiti just here. You can see we're braking just slightly before it. So alternatively, as you come past this sort of VW badge, I'm assuming this is meant to be, as you come past the VW badge, down into 3rd. I'm not a big fan of cutting a lot off this curb, because there's a really dodgy lip around about here that can sort of pop the car up. So I'm more aimed just to get all over the top of the curb here. You can see it's a flat top on these curbs, so the car shouldn't really pop off them too much. So as we come through here, you can see keep the right hand side tires on the flat bit. Through the left, just clipping that curb. You don't really want to get all over it, because it will shoot the car right. And you can see here, just watch for this. If you go a little bit too far here, the right front will drop off the curb, the right rear will still be on it, and it will just want to shoot the car left. You see we just about catch that there. Braking again on this graffiti just here. As you come past this love heart, we sort of brake just on that graffiti there. Again, it's really hard to kind of explain, but that is where we're braking. And then into 3rd gear, over the right hander, bringing the throttle in just before we get to the curb. And then as we drop off here, nice and gentle application to the throttle. The car does tend to sort of bobble and sort of move around a little bit on the exit, so it isn't sometimes inclined to snap. But with that, it should be okay. Just watch for the exit there. As you come up over the top of the hill, just leave it in 5th, do not shift to 6th unless you're behind a car and you've got draft, and you might need to, obviously, so you don't hit the rev limiter, but I keep it in 5th here. Lifting off, just as we come past this access road on the left, so we'll lift out of it, and then once we get past the start of this curb on the right hand side, we're going to get back into the throttle again. So it's lift off here, get to the start of the curb, straight back on it. You see the car compresses into the track there, and it will stick on the exit. Watch the grass, up into 6th gear now, here, at the top of the hill. As we head down this straight here, again this left is just a lift. This new car has a ton of downforce, a ton of grip. It's really, really fun to drive here. So as we come past the 5 kilometer board here, you can see lift off the throttle, and then just before we get to the top of the hill, back on the throttle again, get the rear tyres to rotate the car round, and you can see we keep it nice and tight to the left hand side. You don't want to be drifting out to here and braking from the middle of the track. This corner up here is really bumpy and it's really easy to lock up, so if you're trying to get from the right hand side and track left, you're more likely to lock a left front, and if you do, you're going to end up going straight off into the grass. So keep it nice and tight to the left here, so we can have a nice straight braking zone. So we're braking so that we get to threshold by the time we get to this line just here. So here we are over that line. If you watch the brake input here, it really doesn't change. We're at threshold now. Just holding that for as long as you can. You can use second in this corner, however I prefer to use it third, just a little bit more stability on power. As we come through, you can see where we drop the brake out of it and how early we are back to throttle. We're way back here, we're in the power already. On the circuit as well, there's a few sort of tyre marks that you can see to just sort of give you a bit of an idea on whereabouts in the track you are. What I do here is, you can see all these tyre marks just here, if we kind of run it back. You see we've got all these tyre marks here. This little bit just here is clean, and then right on this second lot of tyre marks here is where we bring the throttle in. There's really, really small things that we're sort of picking out here, but you can see that the track here is pretty clean in this section, and then you start to have more lock-up marks just here. So I'm picking up the throttle right as I get to the start of that there, like so, and you can see how aggressive we are on the power in third gear. That's why I prefer to use third. Just saves you having to have an upshift in the middle of the corner. And then as we head down the hill, one of the fastest parts of the circuit, really, really exciting this section. Not really an overtaking zone, however, because of this left-hander here, but as you come up the hill, you see this board up on the right-hand side. We're going to brake just before we get to that. From inside the car here, you can see we're in 6th. Probably an even better marker, actually, is as you come over this last little piece of graffiti just here. See it just there. Come over the top of it, dab the brakes, down into 5th, clip the curb on the left, a little dab of throttle just to settle the car. Distribute some more of the weight, sort of try and distribute it evenly over all 4 wheels just before you get back onto the brakes again. So we're braking well before we get to this mark here. So it's basically as soon as you hit that curb on the left, a little dab of throttle and then onto the brakes straight away, start decelerating the car. Aim to get straight in at the right hander here as you're down into 4th, then down into 3rd. As you come over this little badge here, back into 3rd gear and back onto power. You're saying, I think this is another sort of VW badge on the throttle here in 3rd. Track it out. Although the next corner is a left-hander, bear with us here. You'll see why we do this. And then as you come through here, you're looking for this little clean bit of track here. Obviously, there's a ton of graffiti here and another lot just after it. This little clean section just here. We're braking on that down into 2nd, and then this allows us to brake in a straight line through here out to the middle of the track. Keep it nice and tight to the left, bringing the power in. Keep it tight to the left again, and then flick it into the right, just lifting out the throttle, and then getting back into it nice and aggressive on the exit. So that section there, we don't really take a traditional racing lane where you sort of open up the corners. You know, we're sort of entering a left-hander from the left-hand side, but that just allows us to carry a little bit more speed and then also brake in a straight line for that left-hander as well. If you try and go any quicker into the other car, will just swap ends. If you were to try and take a more traditional line and line everything up again, you're just gonna bleed time. The line will be better, but the actual speed carried won't be there. That's just the optimal way to take it, I've found. And as we come through this left-hander, you lift off just gently onto the brakes before we get to the end of this sort of darker patch of asphalt here. Just a little dab of brake, and then right as we go over this sort of zebra crossing looking thing, we're right back onto the power again in 5th gear, back to 100%. Braking just here. If you look as the it sort of turns from curbing to grass, just here if we run it back, you'll be able to see from inside the car as well. Once we get to that, we're on the brakes, down into 4th, down into 3rd, turn the car in, and you can see these tyre marks here, the couple running across the track. Just as we hit them, we're onto the power. Kind of nice and gentle on the throttle. You don't want to track out too wide as we do need to flick through this right, and it does tighten on exit. So as we shift up into 4th, you would just brush the curb on the right, and here you're going to see how much the track really tightens up. Here you can see the grass really cuts in quite aggressively. And you can see we're sort of having to turn away from it just a little bit. And you can also see how close we're running to that grass as well. And as we come into the hairpin, braking just as we come past this this sign up on the left hand side, just before it. So you're braking just before this sign here and just after the 8 km board. So you're somewhere in the middle here roughly. That's your sort of safe range. Down into 2nd, hit the first apex, drift out just a little bit, and then you can see bring the power in just as we get to these tire marks here. You can see that sort of coming at a different angle to the rest of them. See, they just start up here. We bring the throttle in there in second, hit that second apex, up into third, then up over the outside curb, nice and easily. Get the car back across to the right hand side. We're up into fifth gear for this point now, and then as we come into this little left right chicane that then leads into miss hit miss, this section is probably one of the scariest on the track, I think. Really high speed, big commitment. If you're a tyre with wrong here, you're in the bin. So we really want to make sure that we get this bit right. Now from back here it's quite hard to see, but if you look here, there's a little dip just in the grass here. You can see there's a sort of black line or darker line that sort of follows the grass. It's not here, and then it is again after. There's a little dip in the grass just there that we use as a turn-in / lift-off point. So you can see once I get to that sort of dip in the grass just there, you see a turn in, aim for the left-hander, we're up into fifth, and then we lift just before we get to the curb, but right as the car compresses, we're back to 100%, and we keep it fully pinned through here. It's a massive commitment section here. It's all about your commitment speed. So we come past that dip on the grass on the right, turn it in for the left, small lift off, back to 100% throttle. You see the car sort of shoots right just a little bit, so I have a tiny little confidence lift again, brush the curb on the right, and then bring it out towards the left-hand side. See, we're really early onto the brakes. Miss hit miss is really tempting to attack, but do not fall for it. It's the devilish corner, this one. It really coaxes you to push harder and push harder, but you really don't want to. Once you come past this right-hander, onto the brakes. There's not really any brake marker as well, unfortunately, for miss hit miss. It's just off feeling. And then obviously clues in the name. We're going to miss this first apex. It'd be probably better if we go to chase cam, we'd be able to see it slightly better. You can see we're keeping it in fifth, down into fourth, miss the first apex, bring the throttle in just before the start of this curb on the inside. Then here's the hit that apex, and then finally miss this curb. Track it out on the exit, back up to fifth, and then down into towards the hairpin. Again, really no brake marker for this one. Really tough. The track is pretty bare, especially with the way the sun's hitting it. There's really nothing to see. But you basically want to make sure that you've already braked and downshifted well before this Yokohama board. From inside the car, it's a little bit of a random guess. You can see there's a couple of little patches. A really small patch just here. Really small, hard to see. We're braking just as we go over that. Down into fourth, into third, clip the curb on the right, clip that apex, down into second. You can see here we're going to take a nice double apex. So we hit the apex on the right, down into second, clip the first apex, drift it wide, bring the power in, get that car turned for the second apex, up to 100% throttle, and then keep it 100% for the exit. Now as we descend into the lowest part of the track, from sea level, we brake just at the start of this graffiti right here. You can see we're on the brakes, fourth, third, turn it in, hitting the throttle just before we get to the apex. Don't run it right out to the curb on the outside, try and leave a little bit of space so that you can get back to the left here. And then braking just at the bottom of the hill, you can see just at the start of this this graffiti on the track just here. Onto the brakes, down into third, turn it in. See how early we are back to throttle as well. This is a really steep uphill section, so you want to be on the power super early. Start that acceleration process as soon as you can. The sooner you get back to throttle here, the more time you're going to gain. If you have a 5-10 meter delay on power application, you're just going to lose so much time. Up to 100% throttle, up into fourth on the exit, out over the curb on the outside. You see the car gets a little bit unsettled there, we're right on the limit. And that's how you take that right hander. Do this left, flat out, 100% in fifth gear, no concerns. Keep the car to the left hand side, and then up here you can see there's this little tree that, or these branches that stick through the barrier just before this Yokohama board. So don't get confused with these few branches here. You want to first of all spot that Yokohama board, then spot this on the left. Brake as you come past those branches, down into fourth, and then down into third. Keep it nice and wide. You want your right hand side tyres to not touch this sort of red badge that's on the track here. I can't quite make out what that is. But you do want to make sure that your right hand side tyres are wide of this. You can see we're aiming to sort of go round it. So we go round it, and then as we drop in to the compression here, you can see how early again we are back to power. Bringing it in well before this graffiti starts, up to 100 by the apex of the right hand side curb, and then that should give you a little bit of room to play with on the exit. Again, we're flat out all the way up the hill, shift to sixth. You want to shift to sixth, just here. If you shift too early, you're going to bleed time, the car will bog down. So then as we come up the hill, into this left hand kink. Really scary corner as well, this one. You want to get right out to the curb on the right hand side up against the wall. You can see we're on the brakes somewhere in the middle of this curbing. There's no real brake marker for this, but you're on the brakes down into 5th, clip the grass on the right hand side and then bring the power in as early as you can. I could have carried a bit more speed through here. I was still a little bit tentative, as you'll see by the time we get to the exit. You can see we're back to throttle well before the apex at the left hander, and then on the exit here you can see no real issues. I did sort of open the steering to allow us to sort of track out to the grass there, but I could have kept it a fair bit tighter. Through here, up against the grass on the left, flick it in for the right, leave it in 5th, car will compress and turn. Just trust the car, it will turn. As it compresses into the track, obviously that will put a lot of force through the tyres, it will get the car to turn, so you don't end up on the grass on the outside. Then we're braking just at the end of this graffiti, just the car's over here, so you're braking just before the end of this, from 5th gear, down to 4th, and through here you're sort of modulating the brake on the way in. It's not a very steady threshold, you do want to be kind of on and off the brake, just trying to avoid any kind of locking up on the way in. You'll see the LED lights, we show this again from cockpit, you'll see the LED lights sort of flickering the whole way in. Keep an eye on them, just here. See the rear lock up there, that's the yellow ones, yellow again, and then there's a little purple lock up on the inside. Then as we come around the corner, as you spot this, as you spot the access road on the inside, or alternatively there's these tire marks with a little kind of X on them. X marks the spot, that's your throttle application point. Start getting gradual into the power on the exit. It does want to oversteer here, it can be slightly negatively cambered, so just be aware of that. Be nice and patient on the power. Then up the hill, move into the middle of the track. There's a big jump on the left hand side that can hurt your momentum by a few hundredths. If you want to move to the middle of the track, it's a slightly smoother run up the hill. And then you can see here it's sort of clean in this sort of square here, and then you have a big bit of graffiti that comes right across to the right hand side. We're braking just before we get to that, down into 3rd, down into 2nd, and then drop the car into the carousel. Basically, once the car's dropped into the carousel, you want to start trailing off the brakes once you know that it's going to stick. So here, obviously I could feel as I dropped in, the car's not going to fall out, I've got the right entry speed. So by that point we then transition to throttle. All we're doing with the throttle here is just sort of trying to keep the speed constant, keep it as high as possible. You can see we're dropped to about 96 or so, maybe 95 for a second there, but we're mostly trying to keep the car around just below 100, and you can see here that every time we hit the throttle the car sort of turns. Because the right hand side tyres are squashed into the track, as you get on the power it's going to want to push the car around, like so. So every time we hit the throttle it pulls the car around, and then just as we're about to jump out of the carousel, we're going to shift up into 3rd, which you'll see just here, up into 3rd by here. That's so that as we land, as we come up out of the carousel, we don't hit the rev limiter in 2nd, and then again that will hurt your run. So you want to shift to 3rd just as you're about to jump out the carousel. That will allow you to keep your run up, keep the momentum. Through here it's flat, up through the left, flat again, and then up through here. We want to be braking just before the start of this curve up on the right hand side, like so. Down into 4th, hit the first apex, bring the throttle in before you get to this darker patch as well. You can see how we're just beginning to bring the throttle in here. Lift out the throttle again to get the nose in, back on the power, still in 4th, all over that outside curb to open up the next right hander, onto the brakes just as you get to the start of this graffiti on the right hand side, down into 3rd gear, and you want to hit this first apex just here. As soon as you hit that, bring the throttle in, track it right out on the exit, don't worry about clipping this curb. You see we're all up over the top of it, a little bit loose over the crest there, but that's fine. Shift up into 5th, and then as we turn in for the right hander here, you can see there's some tyre marks on the track, or alternatively you can use the start of this curb just a little bit earlier than the start of the curb. You can see we're going to lift out the throttle here just to get the nose to turn in, and then right before we get to this change in concrete here, or change of asphalt, we're on the brakes, down into 4th, keep it tight to the right hand side like so that you can then turn it in, and then get onto the power just before we get to this graffiti on the right hand side here. Really hectic section this, so feel free to rewind this and kind of watch it through a couple times just to make sure you have it, but we'll go through it one more time. Lifting off just at the start of these tyre marks, this allows us to scrub a little bit of speed off, dab the brakes down to 4th, keep it tight to the right hand side, back on the power again just to keep the speed up and keep the rotation going. Braking from the right hand side of the track as the graffiti on the right hand side, get back on the power, and again just modulate the power so that you can keep it nice and tight to the left the full way through, but you still want to cut off this left hander like so. You can see we cut the left up to 100% throttle, then have a little bit of a lift as we flick it in for the right. Cut as much off the right as you dare, getting to 100% throttle just over the top of that. Little confidence left on the exit, and you can see we track it out to the grass. This is absolutely fine, no off track, as long as you make sure that you get back onto the curb, onto the red and white here before braking, like so. Down into, I believe it's 4th gear for this section. Yep, really high speed section this. Really exciting section as well. We're going to brake just before we get to, again, or you can see actually we're braking way back here, well before the VW sign. Getting to threshold by the sort of VW sign. In 4th, turn it in for the apex, back to throttle super early at the start of this graffiti on the left hand side. You can see big chunk of graffiti here on the power. Getting to 100% just as we come up over the crest. Make sure to use the curb on the outside, and then as we come down the hill, don't worry too much about getting to the far right hand side. This left hander's cambered, so we want to just sort of drive it in the middle of the track. Braking again as we come over the VW badges. Keep it in the middle of the track, drop it into the cambered section, down into 3rd, clip the 1st apex, bring the throttle in as soon as you hit that apex. Up into 4th, clip that 2nd apex so that we're braking from the far left hand side, like so. Again, braking just at these tyre marks on the track. As we come in here, you can see there's these sort of tyre marks just beginning. Braking just on them, down into 3rd, drop it into the corner, and right as the car compresses at YouTube corner, we're right onto the power here. Up to 50%, then a sort of gradual increase up to 100. Track the car out, don't go any wider than this, middle of the car over this bit here, you'll get an off track, so make sure to keep it within those limits. And then just keep it nice and straight on the curb like so. Use all of that curb until it turns to grass, use every last piece of it. You want to brake as well just before you get to, you can see this bit of graffiti that sort of sticks out here. You can see it from in the car back here as well. You can see this bit that's sort of pretty clean round about this section here, and then this big bit sticks out. We're braking just at that, in 4th, down into 3rd, and then right as you hit the apex on the power, again, right before this VW sign. You see a kind of trend here, we're using a lot of these VW signs throughout the lap. And then on the exit, gradually get onto the power. It does want to kind of step out at the rear there. Obviously you've just been through a very high speed loaded section for the last minute or so. The rear tyres are pretty tired by this point, but you can see we're bringing it back over to the right. Braking just in the compression of the track here before it changes to the darker tarmac just up here. Down into 3rd gear, turn it in, and then just as this graffiti ends right here, you're going to see bring the power in, keep it nice and tight to the curb on the left, up to 100% throttle as you begin to track it out, and make sure to make full use of this curb on the right. Get the car right up over it. Car will take it absolutely fine. Then we head down the hill towards the dipper. As we bring it in, we're going to have a small dab of the brakes just as we come over the top of this graffiti just here. We have a small dab of the brakes down into 4th. Once we land, do not do it in mid-air, you'll blow the engine. If any of you guys saw the Porsche Super Cup from the start of 2021, you would have seen Sebastian Job do this. Never ever downshift in mid-air, it will blow the engine. So you can see we hit the brakes, let the car drop, land, then into 4th. You can see the little spike of throttle just there. Down into 4th, clip the 1st apex, bring the throttle in as soon as you see the start of this graffiti just here, just before the start of the apex. Bring the throttle in, up to 100% throttle, we then have another little lift through this 2nd right. Back to 100% throttle again, and then as you flick it into the left, the car will go light. Small confidence lift there, didn't really need to, could have kept it 100%, but at this stage in the lap, we're just wanting to make sure that we finish now, more than keep it flat out and risk everything for an extra 200s. Completely flat down the hill, up into 6th gear through this right-hander, through the left, through the right, completely pinned, no issues, car's absolutely glued to the track at this section. And then you can see as we get to this big piece of graffiti just here, onto the brakes. Gradually coming down the gears, down into 5th, no real rush, down into 4th, just there, then bring the throttle in just before the end of this red and white, so you can see where we're bringing the throttle in, way back here. Again, this is uphill, so make sure that we're carrying the momentum up the hill, but just that little burst of throttle. Then as we bring it in, we come over this graffiti on the track here, onto the brakes, down into 3rd, open the corner up nice and early, and again, super early back to throttle. Really steep part of the track can be quite deceiving. When you're in the car, you don't really think that it's too steep, but obviously you can see from here how high up the track sort of raises. We're on the throttle nice and early. You can see a few tyre marks on the track actually. See these two just sort of cutting across the track. On the power there, gradually getting on it, because obviously on the exit it does tighten up a fair bit. We have plenty of curb to use, but it does quite quickly turn to grass, so you do want to make sure you don't run too wide. You don't really want your left hand side tyres up on this curb and on the outside. Finally, onto the brakes. As we come over this extra bit of graffiti just here, down into 3rd gear, turn it in for the mini carousel, and as soon as the car drops in, you're picking the throttle up straight away. You don't want to be dropping it into the carousel and still decelerating, because if you do that, you're going to come in, have the weight over the front tyres, and if you're still on the brakes, the car's going to drop into the carousel and it's just going to pull you onto the inside. It's going to pull you straight into here. Obviously the track is pushing you to the inside, so there's no reason to be decelerating, because otherwise it's going to push you into the curb on the inside. You want to be using this this banked section to accelerate. See, it drops in, we're on the power in third gear, up to 100% throttle, then as we pop out over the top of it, up into fourth. Finally, really tough part of the track this. As we come over this yellow graffiti just around here, you can see just a small dab of the brakes in fourth, picking the throttle up really aggressively just before the apex. Not straight to 100, it's up to about 75, and then a kind of gradual increase up to 100. Shift up into fifth just here, and again you can see some branches sort of sticking through the catch fence just on the left hand side here. You'll want to lift off as you come to these here, and then you want to start turning it in, get it in nice and shallow. You want to turn it in nice and early. You can see the curb's not even here yet, and we're already at the inside of the corner. Once you get to the start of this curb here, we're going to meet to 100% throttle. So from between the branches here and the start of this curb on the inside, you don't want to be full throttle. You can see we get to 100 just there at the start of the curb, and then you can start to track it out. The corner really opens up on the exit, and you can carry all your speed down the Dottener, down this long straight. Probably the best overtaking opportunity on the circuit. If you can keep close to someone for an entire lap, you can get a move done down the hill here, flat out through the left, flat out through the right, and then you want to get onto the brakes just here. As we see, there's a big chunk of graffiti just around here, and then there's a big break in the graffiti here. It's a nice sort of clean section of track. As we come in, braking just at the clean section, down into fifth, down into fourth, into third. You see there's a big chunk there's a big sort of drop here, and you see you get a big chunk of suspension travel as I hit that, a little small lockup, and then finally down into second. So your whole goal through here is carrying as much speed as you can while minimising the lockups. It's quite a bumpy section, quite high speed. The car does want to lock. Then as you come through here, keep it tight to the left hand side, keep your left hand side tyres to the left of this white line the whole way in, into second. Once you get to the grass on the outside, flick it into the last corner, bring the throttle in super early, and just try and run along the top of this curbing here. Remember, way back at the start of the Nordschleife, I was saying you sort of want to run over the top of these because they're flat topped curbs. You can sometimes catch quite a bad lip. You can see here we're just up over the flat bit. The car drops off it, no issues whatsoever, and should give you a good line to be absolutely pinned to the finish line. So guys, with that, if you've stuck around for this full video, thank you so much for that. Obviously doing a tutorial with the Nordschleife is never easy. It's always going to be a bit of a long one. There's so many really small little details to this circuit that you need to try and pick out. But honestly, the best advice I can give if you're doing a lap around the Nordschleife here is just keep doing lap after lap after lap. Break this tutorial down into sections, start focusing on small sectors at a time. If you need to go and revisit any kind of sector at any time, then by all means do that. If you want to rewind this tutorial, I definitely recommend watching this 2, 3, 4 times. Just obviously make sure that there's a lot of info in here, and make sure that it gets into your brain and you understand every single piece of it before you get out on track. It's the most tough one of the most tough circuits on the sim, if not the toughest on the road side of things. So really make sure that you've paid attention, you understand everything, and you can do a full race distance cleanly and safely without wrecking anyone else out. This is such a hard circuit to get around, and there's such a tight track as well. If you have an accident, someone's going to hit you if they're behind you. So of course guys, as always, any kind of questions, especially here, feel free to just shout in the Academy Discord and we can get back to you. But with that guys, the best of luck in all your races this week, and we'll catch you next week.